picture this. You're standing on Webb Dock in Melbourne. It's the afternoon of March 26, 1992. The air smells like, heavy diesel exhaust and salt.
Yeah, just a typical busy port environment.
Well, exactly. And right in front of you, there's this Australian roll-on, roll-off vessel, the SeaRoad Mersey. It's executing what should be a completely routine unberthing maneuver to cross the Bass Strait.
Right. It's the kind of everyday industrial logistics that usually just blends right into the background. Massive steel ships moving slowly, deckhands tossing lines, all that heavy machinery humming.
Until the illusion of control just totally shatters. Because in a split second, this heavy stern mooring rope, which is being pulled into the ship, violently whips across the deck.
Moving so fast, it's basically just a blur.
Yeah, and the eye of that rope, the looped end, it acts like a massive lasso. It catches the ship's second mate right around the head and shoulders. And with this terrifying, unstoppable force, it pulls him right over the steel rail and into the water.
Just a sudden, catastrophic failure of a process that had probably been done, thousands of times before without incident.
Thousands of times.
But when we look closely at the incident reports for this deep dive, we see that this wasn't an anomaly at all. It was an inevitability.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because as a society, you and I, the listener, we look at heavy industry and we just assume it operates under these ironclad safety nets.
We assume the rules are proactive.
Exactly. But the sources we are looking at today reveal a much darker reality, which is that maritime regulations are very often written in blood.
They really are.
So in this deep dive, we are going to explore the sources to unpack this specific tragic event. We're going to examine how a culture of risk normalization created this deadly trap.
And trace how the shockwaves of this single accident completely rewired Australian maritime safety protocols.
Right, and forged the strict legal requirements that protect modern marine engineers today.
Because the 1992 fatality on the SeaRoad Mersey is just a profound case study. It forces us to look past the immediate mechanical failure,
And look at the humans.
Exactly. The human element, the environment, the commercial pressures, and those psychological blind spots that plague highly skilled professionals.
Which leads to the central question we really need to answer here. How does a highly trained professional crew become completely blind to a fatal hazard that is literally swinging right in front of them?
Well, to understand the modern maritime laws governing the Bass Strait today, we have to start by breaking down the exact mechanical and human failures that unfolded at 16:32 p.m. on that afternoon in 1992.
The technical investigation reports give us a very clear, very grim timeline. So the second mate was overseeing the retrieval of the stern ropes. And the reports specifically note his physical size, which is important.
Right. He was 198 centimeters tall.
That's about 6'6", a powerfully built guy. Just visualizing a man of that size being thrown around like a rag doll really emphasizes the massive physical forces at play here.
It's terrifying.
He was leaning over the rail during the unberthing, and the crew was using the ship's quote-unquote blue hydraulic winch to pull the stern rope in.
The physics of the accident are crucial to understanding why it was so violent. The retrieval speed of that hydraulic winch was set to its absolute maximum.
Meaning?
We're talking about pulling in a thick, heavy marine rope at a velocity of 2.0 to 2.5 meters per second.
Which is incredibly fast for something that heavy. It's moving faster than a person can run.
Yeah, and when you combine that speed with the mass of the rope, the kinetic energy is just massive. As the eye of the rope neared the ship's side, that high-speed retrieval caused a centrifugal effect.
The rope whip.
Right. The forensic analysis formally describes this as rope whip. Because the winch is pulling the line so fast, the free hanging end doesn't just slide up the side of the hull.
It flails.
The rotation and tension cause it to violently flail in a wide arc.
It caught him, threw him against the side of the ship, and pulled him under the wharf. And there is a quote in the incident log from the ship's master, making a radio call to shipping control just moments later that just stops you in your tracks.
It's chilling.
He says, "He's gone under the wharf with the tide. Appears to be very serious." I'd say fatal just looking at it.
And the master was standing high up on the bridge wing watching this happen, but completely helpless to intervene once that physical chain of events was in motion.
But this is where I get stuck. The sources say this winch had a proportional speed control system. So I think of that like a car's accelerator pedal, right?
That's a good way to look at it. You can ease into it.
Exactly. You can control the speed based on how far you push the lever, slowing down as the rope gets closer to the ship. So why would a trained deck officer effectively floor the gas during a delicate and highly dangerous mooring maneuver?
Well, the Victorian coroner's inquest sought to answer that exact question the following year, and what they uncovered points directly to a systemic, deeply ingrained cultural failure.
It wasn't just a machine glitch.
No, this wasn't a freak mechanical glitch where the machine suddenly malfunctioned and sped up on its own. Setting the winch to maximum speed was actually the second mate's normal practice.
Wait, his normal practice. To pull it in so fast that it creates this centrifugal weapon.
Yeah. The coroner discovered that other crew members had witnessed this deadly rope whip before. It was a known phenomenon on the SeaRoad Mersey.
They had seen it flail wildly during previous unberthings.
Yes, multiple times.
Okay, I have to push back here. If you are standing on a deck and you see a massive, heavy rope flying uncontrollably through the air, isn't it basic common sense to speak up? How does an entire crew just stay silent and not report that to the ship's safety committee?
What's fascinating here is the psychology of the workplace environment. It's a textbook example of risk normalization.
Or the normalization of deviance.
Exactly. This is a psychological trap where highly trained professionals repeatedly take hazardous shortcuts to save time, because nothing catastrophic happens the first 10 times.
Or the first 100 times.
Right. Their brains literally rewrite the rules. They start to believe the shortcut is inherently safe.
So they got away with it so many times, the extreme speed just became the new normal baseline.
Precisely. The baseline of what is considered acceptable risk slowly shifts, eroding their safety margins entirely. And in the high-intensity logistics of the Bass Strait freight sector, operational speed often quietly trumps caution.
Because the SeaRoad Mersey was on a tight, continuous loop between Melbourne, northern Tasmania, and King Island, time is literally money.
Always.
And the sources show the equipment itself was basically setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
The human-machine interface on this ship was a total ergonomic disaster.
It was. The control levers on the shipside bulwark, the wall around the deck, did not match the actual physical layout of the winches on the deck.
So confusing.
The winches were color-coded, yellow, blue, red, and green for the different lines, but the remote control box levers didn't align intuitively with that layout.
It's like getting into a rental car, where pushing the gear shift forward puts you in reverse, and pulling it back puts you in drive. When you're relaxed, you can think about it and remember the quirk.
But in an emergency.
Right. In a high-stress, split-second emergency, your brain defaults to what's physically intuitive. If the layout is wrong, you crash.
That spatial mapping failure is deadly in heavy industry. Furthermore, the investigation found that the blue winch, the one involved in the fatality, failed to stop immediately when the control lever was released.
There was a significant control lag.
Yes. So even if the integrated rating, essentially a versatile deckhand assisting the officers, saw the rope whip and let go of the lever to stop it, the system wouldn't have responded in time.
Plus, the ATSB report noted that the crew lacked proper training on the actual physics of mooring rope dynamics and how to properly use that proportional speed control.
They were just given this highly specialized, finicky equipment and basically left to figure out the fastest way to use it on their own. And when a crew is conditioned to ignore a lethal spinning rope just to shave a few minutes off an unberthing, that normalization of risk doesn't stay contained to the mooring deck. It bleeds through the bulkhead doors.
It infects everything.
It infects the entire culture of the ship. The 1992 fatality was ultimately a symptom of a vessel pushed to its absolute limits.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when you look at the timeline of this vessel, the red flags just keep popping up in every single department. Let's look at 2003.
Okay, the propulsion failure.
Right. The ship is clearing Point Lonsdale, heading out into the open waters of the Bass Strait at night, and they suffer a massive engine room alarm and lose propulsion.
A catastrophic failure of the port main engine. Specifically, a Wärtsilä 8R32E engine. These engines are essentially the workhorses of the sea.
They don't just break.
Right. They are massive, ultra-reliable Finnish diesel power plants designed to run relentlessly. They really shouldn't just break.
So when a power plant that robust fails, it tells investigators something is seriously wrong with how the ship is being run.
It's a massive red flag. It indicated that the intense commercial tempo was placing immense strain on the ship's mechanical components.
And it exposed serious flaws in their planned maintenance system.
Exactly. They weren't replacing parts when they were worn. They were running the hardware to the absolute breaking point just to keep the freight moving.
And that exact same cultural infection shows up on the navigational side, too. I mean, the collision with the dredger, the AM Vela.
Oh, right.
The SeaRoad Mersey was navigating a constrained channel, and instead of looking out the window for visual confirmation, the master was glued to the ARPA radar.
ARPA stands for Automatic Radar Plotting Aid. It's a highly sophisticated system designed to track multiple targets on the open ocean. But the master had it set to a 6-mile range while inside a tight channel.
Which is like looking through a telescope to walk down a crowded hallway. You might see the end of the hall perfectly, but you are completely blind to the person standing 2 feet in front of you.
Relying on long-range radar settings in a confined space drastically reduces your immediate situational awareness. By the time he looked up and realized how close they were to the immediate hazard, frantic helm orders weren't enough.
They hit a navigational beacon and then collided with the dredger.
Yeah.
And the most terrifying example of this maintenance and training failure has to be the 2006 oxygen fire. A trainee engineer was involved in an explosion because an unsuitable replacement hose, referred to in the report simply as hose pipe B, was used in a system venting at 200 bar of pressure.
Which is incredible.
Let me just translate that for a second for you, the listener. 200 bar is almost 3,000 pounds per square inch. That's the pressure inside a heavy-duty scuba tank, but we're talking about an oxygen system.
It is an explosive amount of energy. Using a non-standard, unsuitable hose in a high-pressure oxygen system is like lighting a match in a powder keg.
It really is.
When we synthesize these events, the mooring fatality, the engine failure, the collision, the oxygen explosion, a clear narrative through line emerges.
You have a high-tempo trade route, prioritizing speed over safety.
You have maintenance regimes failing to keep up, leading to jury-rigged fixes like that hose, and crucially, you have steep, highly dangerous learning curves for junior or trainee personnel forced to handle this aging, non-standard equipment.
It's like a company running a 247 delivery truck. If management only cares about the delivery schedule, the maintenance falls apart. The brakes get worn down.
And the newest drivers?
Exactly. The newest drivers, the ones who don't know that you have to pump the brakes a certain way to get them to work, are the ones most likely to be behind the wheel when they eventually fail entirely.
And it was this exact pattern, this constant commercial pressure resulting in a string of severe incidents that forced the Australian government to completely overhaul the system.
The Wild West environment of the early 90s could no longer be tolerated.
Not at all.
So let's look at that legal shift. Because the protections that marine engineers and seafarers operate under today are entirely different from the environment the second mate faced in 1992.
The 1992 tragedy was a watershed moment because it tested the newly minted Seafarers Rehabilitation and Compensation Act. Before this, compensation was largely state-based, fragmented, and frankly, often difficult to secure.
Yeah, but this new federal act required all maritime employers to hold comprehensive workers' compensation insurance and established a central authority.
Which finally hit the shipping companies where it actually hurts.
The wallet.
The wallet, yeah. Suddenly, poor safety records brought massive financial penalties and skyrocketing insurance premiums down on the operators. Safety was no longer just a moral obligation. It was a hard, unavoidable economic liability.
At the same time, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA, aggressively ramped up their port state control inspections. Following the Mersey fatality, AMSA inspectors started physically boarding roll-off vessels to audit their equipment.
They weren't just checking paperwork anymore.
No, they were inspecting the winches, checking the fair leads, those reinforced metal loops on the edge of the ship that the ropes feed through, and auditing the actual living and working conditions of the crew.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are seeing in the years following 1992 is a massive cultural shift driven by the International Safety Management Code, the ISM code.
Which is huge.
This is perhaps the most important regulatory change in modern maritime history.
How did the ISM code actually change things on the deck, though?
It flipped the burden of proof. Before the ISM code, if an investigator wanted to penalize a ship, the investigator had to prove the ship was unsafe. The ISM code flipped the script. It forced the shipping companies to prove, with an audited paper trail, that they were actively maintaining a safe environment through a holistic safety management system.
Right. They had to document every procedure, every risk assessment, and every maintenance check.
Exactly. If the paper trail broke, they couldn't sail. We moved from, does the winch turn on, to can you prove the crew is trained to use this winch safely?
Right. And you see the culmination of that evolution in the modern sources we have today. Look at the regulations under the Navigation Act 2012. It enforces strict compliance with the Maritime Labor Convention. And the 2024 AIMPE Enterprise Agreement for SeaRoad Shipping, the union agreement for the engineers, is incredibly specific.
It provides legally binding protections that would have been completely unimaginable to the crew of the SeaRoad Mersey in 1992.
For example, the agreement doesn't just say, try to protect your hearing. It mandates specific personal protective equipment if engine room noise exceeds 85 decibels.
Which is a very clear metric.
Exactly. It dictates strict administrative controls by the chief engineer to prevent heat stress. It removes the ambiguity. It says, here's the exact decibel level where safety becomes a legal requirement.
Furthermore, these modern agreements include detailed settlement of disputes procedures. This is critical. It creates a formal, protected pathway for crew members to raise safety issues directly without fear of retribution or losing their jobs.
If the crew of the SeaRoad Mersey had felt empowered by a system like that in 1992, someone might have formally reported the rope whip hazard long before it killed the second mate.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because we've traced this incredible evolution from a deadly mooring accident to highly sophisticated, automated ships operating under these dense legal frameworks. Have we entirely eliminated the risk? Or is this tension between commercial pressure and human safety still quietly simmering in the background?
Well, the sources suggest the tension is very much alive. We have to look at the submission from the Maritime Union of Australia to the Productivity Commission regarding national transport regulatory reform.
Right, the MUA submission. Now, we should know we're just unpacking what's in their submission here.
Of course. The MUA argues that while international vessels are held to a gold standard, a loophole exists for domestic commercial vessels.
Yeah, the MUA submission outlines this two-tiered system. Basically, if a ship operates internationally, it has to follow the Strict Navigation Act 2012. But if a commercial vessel just sails domestically, say, purely within Australian waters, it operates under a deregulated national law framework.
And under that national law, operators of domestic commercial vessels can sometimes determine for themselves what safety measures are required on board.
Which seems wild.
They essentially write their own safety rules to save money, relying on their own objective perception of risk.
But as we learned from the SeaRoad Mersey, when an operator is influenced by commercial pressures, their perception of risk becomes normalized and heavily distorted.
Exactly. The union submission cites coroner reports detailing fatalities on these domestic vessels arising from insufficient crew, uncertified casual employees acting as deckhands, and a complete lack of safe systems of work.
The submission mentions a specific case where a vessel operator altered their safety management system paperwork to forbid crew from going ashore if no gangway was rigged, rather than actually spending the money to provide a safe physical mechanism for access.
It's just the illusion of safety through paperwork.
Yeah. The MUA's core argument is that the burden of risk in this two-tiered system is rarely borne by the vessel owners sitting in an office, but by the crew they hire or the passengers on board. They are pushing for all commercial vessels to be regulated under the Stricter Navigation Act 2012 to ensure those international minimum standards apply domestically as well.
So while the 1992 fatality paved the way for massive improvements, the push for safety is a constant tug of war against the bottom line.
It is an ongoing battle. The legacy of that tragedy is embedded in the robust safety management systems of modern base-rate freighters. The requirement to document, audit, and empower the crew to speak up directly targets the vulnerabilities that killed the second mate.
But regulations are only as good as their enforcement, right? And the commercial pressure to cut corners never truly goes away.
It's a heavy realization. We started this deep dive looking at a horrific moment on a Melbourne dock, a deadly, high-speed rope whip caused by rushed habits and poorly designed equipment. And we've seen how that incident laid the groundwork for today's federally mandated safety management systems, completely shaping the modern base-rate freight sector and the legal rights of the marine engineers working there today.
It highlights that safety isn't a static achievement. It's not a box you check once. It's an active, daily practice of questioning what we consider normal.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering question for you to mull over regarding your own life. We've spent this time examining how deadly the normalization of deviance can be on a cargo ship. But look at your own workplace. Look at your daily commute. If an ATSB investigator were to walk in and audit your daily routines tomorrow, what normalized risks would they find? Are you operating under true safety system or like a heavy mooring rope pulled tight? Have you just been lucky it hasn't snapped yet?